This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best platform for building your own website.
Do you have a shorter name? Not just short.
This is Lilu from The Fifth Element,
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
which at the time of its release was the most expensive European film ever made. And this is Laureline.
Do you want me to drive?
No, thank you.
From Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, the film that eventually broke that record. And what they have in common is that both films were directed by the same guy, Luc Besson,
I told you.
whose work you're probably already familiar with. But the difference is that while The Fifth Element became a massive commercial and cultural success, Valerian turned into one of the biggest box office failures of all time. So much so that it ended up sinking the director's own production company.
Will you marry me?
Not funny.
Laureline, I'm serious.
And what's interesting is that he never saw it coming because he was so confident in the project that he had already written an entire trilogy. But when you think about it, you can't really blame him. After all, Valerian and Laureline is one of the comic series that helped shape many of the foundations of modern science fiction, including, quite obviously, Star Wars, to the point where George Lucas borrowed so much from it that the original artist later published a protest illustration showing Luke and Leia meeting Valerian and Laureline face to face. And when you factor in how strong the source material was, plus the fact that Luke already had the Fifth Element under his belt, Valerian, on paper, probably felt like a sure thing. But matching what that film achieved was almost impossible. And to me, it still stands as one of the most interesting sci-fi visions of the 20th century.
Anybody else want to negotiate?
And I think there are several reasons why this turned out the way it did. Part of it is that what could initially be seen as the Fifth Element's limitations actually ended up working in its favor. Because while Valerian relies on nearly 3,000 VFX shots,
Oh no.
The Fifth Element has only around 220, which shifts the heart of the film away from pure visual spectacle and toward the relationships between the characters and the chemistry they share.
My lucky day.
And unlike Valerian, which follows space cops hopping from planet to planet, our introduction to the city in The Fifth Element comes through an everyday citizen, a taxi driver, and that becomes our way into the world the film presents, which immediately helps you connect with its universe. And that's not just because he's played by the most relatable guy in the world, but because you experience the city from a human point of view, one you can actually connect with emotionally.
What?
Hey, buddy, I'm waiting all day here.
Finger.
Where is the cab?
Which works precisely because the film isn't constantly shoving its world in your face. Instead, it's built more like a background character. Rather than asking you to learn its universe and its lore, the film asks you to experience it. And that's why every set feels real, as if it exists on its own, even when the camera isn't there.
I am Corbin Dallas.
But what I love about this universe is that it doesn't really look like anything we'd seen before, because it's very different from this, or this, or this. I mean, in films like Blade Runner, you're dealing with a dystopian future filled with shadows, constant rain, rough textures, and above all, neon lights. The kind that feel like the only thing cutting through a dark, foggy world of muted landscapes. But The Fifth Element proposes the exact opposite kind of future.
2 golden menus.
And it's not just the tone that's different, or the fact that the characters themselves are more charismatic. It's that the entire aesthetic deliberately pushes against the trend of its time and embraces something far more pop and colorful. And you can feel that intention right from the very beginning of the film, which opens in the early 20th century, with a prologue set in a vibrant, almost playful version of Egypt, where we're introduced to alien characters for the first time. This time, they're not leather-jacketed robots or sharp-toothed monsters. Instead, their design is absurdly specific, highly stylized, and above all, almost playful.
Are you German?
And this is something I really pay attention to, because the way a director designs a world, especially its creatures, says a lot about their intentions. I mean, if you think about it, lately whenever we see advanced alien civilizations on screen, there's a clear tendency toward realism, and that often translates into designs that feel restrained and sober. And even this same director fell into that with Valerian, especially with the Pearls, the film's central alien race, where you can clearly see how their design is influenced by more recent sci-fi references, since they feel like a kind of midpoint between the Na'vi from Avatar and the engineers from Prometheus. But when you look at this, it doesn't really resemble anything you've seen before, to the point where, more than aliens, they feel like walking sacred statues, and their design responds to two main factors. First, technology simply wasn't as advanced at the time, so the film had to rely on functional, practical effects. And second, there was a clear desire to build a new kind of sci-fi aesthetic, moving away from darker traditions and leaning into something far more naive. Perhaps because this universe has existed in the director's imagination since early childhood, with the first drafts written during his preteen years, so it makes sense that it still feels like it comes from a young mind. And you can see that intention across the entire world, but especially in the characters, and most clearly in Lilu, the protagonist. And today, I want to talk about how this aesthetic doesn't make the film any less serious, but instead makes the warning it puts forward even more unsettling. But before we continue, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Because honestly, one of the things that really helped me turn my audiovisual projects into something real was having a proper website. And if you don't have experience building one, Squarespace is easily the best place to start. It lets you create a site that looks great and actually works, and their AI tools make the whole process incredibly intuitive. You can build something that doesn't just look nice, but genuinely feels like you. And just like you can control how your site looks, you can also choose its name with Squarespace domains, where you can buy and manage your domain safely and easily, all in one place, with built-in privacy and security, and no hidden fees or extra add-ons. So if you're interested, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when your site is ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Lanceloti to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, back to the video.
You no trouble. Me, fifth element. Supreme being.
It's no secret that Lilu has a very particular duality, because she's meant to be a supreme being.
Father, are you sure she's a supreme being?
Absolutely sure.
Yet at times, she behaves like a child.
People lie.
Which makes sense, since she's literally just come into existence. And in a way, that childlike quality radiates outward to the entire film, which can feel almost cartoonish at times, with sharp editing beats, exaggerated situations, and even villains that are funny and cartoonish,
My favorite.
rather than threatening. And of course, that tone carries over into the aesthetic, which is far more playful and vibrant than most other sci-fi worlds.
You have 5 points left on your license.
Thank you for reminding me.
That said, there is one important thing it has in common with Valerian, because if the original comic popularized anything on a visual level, it was the idea of retrofuturism. Basically, it's an aesthetic movement about imagining the future the way people in the past thought it would look. So it ends up being a mix of nostalgia and fascination with technology, creating a version of the future that never really happened, which you can see clearly in cases like the hoverboards in Back to the Future, but also in smaller details, like the ship interfaces in Alien, the scanners in Blade Runner, almost every prop in Star Wars, or even Johnny Cab in Total Recall.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cab. Where can I take you tonight?
And a lot of these elements also tie into another idea that emerged in the mid-20th century, and that the fifth element really leaned into, the concept of the used future. One that's no longer filled with shiny optimistic objects, but with things that feel worn out, outdated, and already past their prime, as if they'd been forgotten long ago. Something you can see very clearly in movies like A New Hope, and in a way that only deepens this sense of nostalgia for a future that not only never arrived, but that, within the fiction itself, already feels like it's come and gone, and become obsolete. And as you can imagine, this kind of approach often goes hand in hand with a darker, more pessimistic aesthetic. And that's why it works so well in movies like Blade Runner. But the fifth element does something different. Even though its world feels worn down and slightly rusted, the aesthetic choice goes in the opposite direction. It's inherently colorful and deeply influenced by naive art and a kitsch aesthetic. And that creates a real dissonance between form and content. And the interesting part is that, contrary to what you might expect, this doesn't make the future it presents feel any less unsettling. I think when it comes to science fiction, there are two main types of films. On one hand, there are films that look backward, stories that build on what's already been established. And Valerian definitely sits there, especially since it's based on a series that helped shape the genre from the ground up. And then there's the second type, the ones that look forward, films that don't just recycle the past, but instead try to theorize about, or warn us of, what's coming next. And I think the fifth element still resonates so strongly because it also dared to make its own predictions. At its core, the film works as a warning. It suggests that a future presented as bright, colorful, and visually appealing can be just as suffocating as a dark, oppressive one, and perhaps even more dangerous, precisely because it hides behind beauty. From a distance, the city looks vibrant and alive.
Sir, are you classified as human?
But when you zoom in, you realize Corbin is alienated by a job he hates, living in an automated, technology-driven system, and trapped inside an apartment where every inch of space is optimized to serve multiple functions. And if you think about it, that reality isn't so far from our own. Corbin lives in what we'd now call a smart, modular micro-apartment, and he works while listening to a robotic voice telling him exactly what to do.
1 point has been removed from your license.
Something that today would probably be sold as being your own boss, like driving for Uber.
Mr. Zorg would like to talk to you.
Mr. Who?
Mr. Zorg.
Jean-Baptiste, Emmanuel,
Zorg.
There's even a clear tension between political and corporate power in his world, since Zorg, a billionaire whose conglomerate spans everything from weapons to spacecraft, holds more influence than entire nation-states.
You see, Father, by creating a little destruction, I'm in fact encouraging life.
The difference is that here, instead of a gray, shadowy dystopia like Blade Runner, everything is bright, visually pleasing. And that's why I think this film still hits so close to home. Because the future we're heading toward looks far less like a dark, rain-soaked world, and much more like this. A dystopia of bright colors and constant stimulation, where the overload makes it harder to even realize that we're living inside one.